one of my dearest friends in the entire world. We actually went to Mississippi State together. We bonded over flowers, and thus our friendship continues over bright colors, conferences, and Walt Disney World. We'll talk about that here in a second. But Linda and I really did hit it off in the floral world, and we continue to stay in contact. We go back and forth about flowers in the landscape and different events that she is doing, and I am so excited for you to meet Linda. Linda, thank you so much for being on the podcast / YouTube channel. And I'm going to let you share a little bit about how you got started in this industry.
Well, my parents were flower-loving people. We always had a garden. We always had a yard. I took for granted that that wasn't every family that did that.
It's not.
But I think that's why Emma and I bonded, because we have similar upbringings, and then I have two sisters and a family similar in size, where our parents kind of were parallel in the things that they loved and did around their house. So if you meet plant-loving people, you just kind of carry them throughout your life. So that's true within our industry, and it's true outside. You know, flowers evoke emotion, and they're also a icebreaker. So I remember as a little child, my mother taking cuttings and me sharing them with the neighbors. And I may have been 6 or 7 years old, but I remember talking about plants to my neighbors. And that was a connection to adults, where I could have a conversation, and it was about color and plant names, and it was about using my memory and really putting things together. Well, that kind of carried me throughout my life. But at Mississippi State, that's where it all really came together. I had experience gardening, but I didn't have the education behind it. And I had also worked for some plant farms, merchandising plants and selling plants. And I really liked the connection between the person buying the plant and how they were going to use it. And it's an emotional purchase. It's a big investment. So they want to know they're doing things right, but it's also very intimidating. So I quickly found out I'm an introvert, but I can talk about plants. And that is the connection I have to people. So I do that now. And I consider, you know, I work a 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. shift, and we do a lot of the magic backstage. But when I get to talk to guests, a lot of times I get questions about the landscape, and they get very excited to talk to someone that works in the landscape, because everyone wants to take a little bit of that home and try it for themselves. But it can be very intimidating, because I work in an environment with hundreds of acres, and it's all manicured and beautiful. But obviously not everyone has that budget or that space to do it. But you can have flowers inside your house, you can have flowers on your doorstep, you can have them on your patio, or you can go big scale and have entire gardens.
So I want to interject something real quick right here. If you have never been to Disney World or a theme park, okay, number one, that needs to be on your list of things to go do, is go to Disney World, because Linda, she is the heart and soul of that, and it's not just 3 people. It is a very large department of people who do everything from weeding to planting to imagining what these giant baskets look like. And I bet that if you have been to a theme park and you've noticed these glorious pots of color spilling over, you remember that. And that's exactly the emotion that we're talking about. When you see something bright and bold, and then this magical memory on top of it, that's pretty incredible. So sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. And at Mississippi State, we worked in the florist together, so we did events. So really, all of that education, that experience prepared me for Disney, because we do lots of events. We do greens, and I worked in that department as well. So we can transform a empty ballroom that's just barren and huge square footage into a winter wonderland, into whatever theme, tropical, woodsy. We can create that look, and along with the florists and the other lighting departments and props, you can really do an event. So you see me at this carport, and I'm loaded down with plants, and that is because one of my dearest friends passed away. And at the memorial, we wanted to do a flower garden, and my concept was a memory garden. So people that came to the event could take some flowers that Bonnie loved back into their garden, and then that memory will carry on. So I think that's a sweet concept that you can easily do with a packet of seeds or one simple little six-inch pot. But Linda being Linda, and my other half will tell you, when I go to the plant farm, I have a very hard time narrowing it down to what I want. So if I have a truck that's as big as the truck is, it will get loaded down, and I will just purchase beautiful things. And then I will find homes for the beautiful things that I purchase with several different projects. But one of my favorite things to do with the things that are left over is to gift them to neighbors and friends. And really, fresh flowers or potted flowers, either way, you can evoke that same emotion with your neighbors. And it really is a conversation starter. If you don't know your neighbors, that's a good way to maybe give them something beautiful for their door. If you notice they have a patio of one particular plant, maybe they're struggling with it and you want to give them one to replace. So that's how I've started a lot of conversations with my neighbors. And I live in a condo with a basic tiny little patio. So, so I don't have the space to do a lot of gardening, but I get my energy out by volunteering with my landscape committee, doing container gardens, and getting volunteered to do events.
So what plants, spill it, what dead plants are in your condo right now or on your patio? Are you nursing anybody back to health right now?
Right now I have a few amaryllis that don't look too hot. And in Central Florida, you have the rainy season and then you have the dry season. So right now we haven't quite hit fall. So right now I'm kind of waiting. So I am, because of being in the forest and seeing all the beautiful colors, and of course it has a life expectancy, I really appreciate season. I appreciate the fact that it's only going to be around with me for a set amount of time. And then I'm just going to wipe that terrace clean and I'm going to start with something new. And that's another way I end up giving plants away because I tire of them. I mean, I might have crown of thorns out there for a year, and then I'm like, looking at you that you're still alive and beautiful, but I'm going to give you to somebody so I can have something else, because I like diversity. And I hear a lot of people at the garden centers, they would ask me, what plant should I pick that's going to, work year round? And I always give them that look like, well, why would you want that? I mean, season is great. Knowing that it's only going to last a short window is part of what makes my heart beat an extra beat, to see that bulb come, the tulip bulb in early spring, or the caladium bulb at summer. Those are the things that really get me excited, because I know I'm only going to have them for a short period of time. But I surround them with things that are tried and true. So that's a good rule for a budget for your landscape. I call it the 80-20 rule, and our landscape architects use it. And a lot of our people planning use it, because obviously you can have beautiful blooming plants, but you can't have that 100%. And you can't maintain it 100%. But if you have a simple design of a green shrub or an iris with beautiful green blades, you can add some of this blooming plant material with it to dress it up for the season, for that container in that moment in time. And then you, as it maybe outgrows its space, you can find another home for it. So that's how I do it to spare the budget.
And I love the fact that you can actually teach us that, because working on a grand scale, you're constantly, when you go into a new season, you're going to replace that first row of plants, or as they're become sick or people trot on them, you're going to take them out, replenish them, make them beautiful. So what's on your table right there? And
I wanted to talk a little bit about color, because color is kind of seasonal to where you live. If you're in a leafy area with all deciduous trees, you have the leaf drop, you have leaf change in colors, you can go with a different color palette. In Florida, most everything is still green. So green is really my go-to color. It's a neutral, but there's so many beautiful shades of green. So, and then you can play off the colors. So I personally do not gravitate to orange. It's a lovely color, but it's not something I use year round. but I can appreciate it for the month of October. I want to use some orange, so I have this Cassandra. This is a great annual that could pop in a little bit of orange into a container that I had, and it looks beautiful with purple. So those are great companion colors. The deeper reds evoke a color of fall to me. And then you have some of these perennials. So here in Florida, perennials don't grow as well as they would like in Tennessee or Georgia or some of those states, but I can use these as an annual. And this definitely looks like fall to me, this Rebecca. So this is a great one. And I also have some echinacea here. And this is a fun one. So
oh, that's beautiful.
Colors that you can pop in. And as far as I'm concerned, there are no rules about gardening. So horticulturally, we have a guidebook. But depending on where we're living and how we're using the product, you can use things as annuals, and you can try to push them to become a perennial. In Central Florida, a lot of our plants would grow almost year round. They're going to cycle in and out of color. So different times of the year, they're going to give you a different look, and that's okay. But it really depends on what you're trying to focus on. So when you're looking at your house or your patio or your terrace, I suggest that you go with a camera and you go across the street and you snap that picture and you're looking at the big picture. What do I want to highlight? And then you narrow it down to a smaller job, because you can't maybe do your entire yard and one, but maybe you can do your doorstep or your stoop and really have people focus on it. So the height is important too. A good way to cheat for the plant size, maybe you can't afford a bald and burlap tree, and you can make a 5 or 7 gallon tree. You could put it in a large container, and that container would lift that tree up and give it about an extra 5 years worth of growth visually. Okay. And then when it outgrows that pot, you could plant it in the yard. Plants grow, they get bigger, and it's very hard for a new gardener to know when they get a plant at the garden center really what that means a year from now, 6 months from now. How big is this going to get? And it's okay to let something that grows aggressively be put in a pot with other things, as long as you're helping control its environment, and then know that maybe you're going to need to pull that out come a couple of it starts to take over.
Okay, so so two things. Larger pots or planters. So that's first question. Second question is, do you have a watering routine when it comes to containers?
Well, that's a good question. It's all about how you choose to set that up. So we were talking about rainy season and dry season. I like to bring things inside and out, and due to hurricane season, obviously if there was a storm coming, I'm going to have to move everything from that patio inside. So that's really changed how I garden on a patio, because it all has to be mobile and I have to be able to move it. So I have little furniture movers that I'll take the pots, and I also have things like this. So I have gotten to where I love terracotta containers, but because they tend to break, I have to use plastic containers for my patio. And there is a great line of containers. You can go on Amazon, you can go to the big box stores, you can find an assortment of sizes and colors. And I've noticed these metallics are really cool. So this has no holes, and it's a 14-inch pot. So this is a great example of, you could have this out on your patio, and I could set my containers with drainage in this pot. Now, if you're going to watch it daily, there's absolutely no reason that you can't let that water fill up. After a rainstorm, you drain it, or you can use a turkey baster. So this is my key for interiors. This is your friend with a simple little bucket. You can drain the water out the base of this planter, and having a little extra water, especially when it's 100 degrees out, can be good for that plant if you're monitoring its water level. But just be aware that if you go away and you don't have someone watching it, your plants are going to float and they're going to perish.
Okay.
They're going to get water. But for me, having no holes in a container and then planting in a grow pot inside a decorative container is how I'm going to do it, because I'm always going to think about it as a short-term item where I'm going to want to move it. So if I move it, am I going to be able to disassemble it so that for the weight, I'm going to be able to handle it myself? So here's my other tip. We all think about a 5-gallon bucket, but really a 5-gallon bucket is too heavy for me. If I fill that up with water, it sloshes, has too much weight. So like a gallon of water is 8 pounds. So 5 gallons, it's just a little bit too much weight for me. But this is a 2-gallon bucket, and you can get lids for these as well. And I carry these around and I water out of these. And so it fits nicely under my kitchen sink because I don't have a hose out there. And so I fill this up with water, put a lid on it, and then I can walk it out to my patio without making my carpet all wet. So you always want to think about where my water source is going to come from if I have something inside or outside. So you want to set yourself up for success by always thinking about that. Am I going to need a watering can, a milk jug, a hose? How am I going to get water to that plant?
And if,
like a little tree saver bag for that tree, because some people just don't enjoy being in their yard every single day. But I will tell you, if you spend 15 minutes walking your landscape every day, doing a little bit of tweaking, hand watering, you'll have great success. And that's my theme. Beautiful, because I have gardeners that walk all those areas every morning to make sure they're in tip-top shape.
And if nothing else, I have learned that gardening gurus are very frugal. So Linda just mentioned, you can use half-gallon milk jugs, you can use gallon milk jugs, you can cut the lid off of them. So there is no, if there is a container sitting around your home that you can manipulate, that is absolutely good to use in the garden. And then how wonderful to get out and be with nature, be with your yard, and love the landscape. Just by doing a 15 or 20-minute walk and enjoying what you've been working on. So that's exciting.
That really does help teach you your plot of ground. So a lot of people can give advice. You can go to the extension agent or garden center and they can give you tips. But visually, you start to learn instinctually what's going on with your landscape. Because, especially here, it could be raining 2 blocks away and I get a thundercloud here. It's really good to test your light conditions and your water conditions by observing at different times of the day. So some people, if they go to work early in the morning, they may only see their landscape at the end of the day at 5 o'clock. But when I ask a homeowner, like, do you have morning sun or afternoon sun? They may not know the answer to that because they don't in the morning. So it's kind of good to know where that sun is hitting, and know also that as the seasons change, even in Central Florida, that sun is in a different spot. So that's kind of important to know. If I have 4 hours of afternoon sun beating on these plants at 5 o'clock in the evening, I'm going to get a much different result than if that's shaded in the afternoon. So these are all important things to think about where you're going to put these pricey investments in your landscape.
Grabbing a little notebook when you walk, just so you can jot down, okay, this flower bed gets this. And if you don't know and don't care to start that process, take your notebook to the local nursery. And wouldn't you suggest nursery and not necessarily big box store, right?
Well, yeah, if you can find it. In reality, in my region, there aren't a lot of local nurseries. So I get so many questions. Where do I get that plant? We have an abundance of growers in this area, but not an abundance of mom and pop nurseries because land prices are high. So you may have to go further out in the country to find those guys. You're going to have to Google and search if you're in Central Florida where to get those. So the big box store really has become the mom and pop nursery center for our region.
Tell me one more time, I still send Linda questions, and I'm a horticulture major as well, but I'm not using my degree the same way she is day in and day out. But what was the Google? It wasn't a Google app. It was an app that you told me to get.
So Google Lens, so if you take a picture, that will search it on the internet and it will try to find hits to match up that picture. So if I'm completely stumped, there's a lot of great plant finder apps, but some of them cost money and I'm a little cheap. So
You're frugal. You're frugal.
And know that, you know, a Latin name, a common name, there can be many names for a plant. And so typically the first thing I ask is when I get a picture, where is this? And like you sent me a picture from Australia, right? You said, well,
there was one from Australia that Sophie sent. There was one from Kansas as well. And I'm like, and I wasn't familiar with either one of them.
I don't know a lot of those plants because that's not the region that I'm working with them. And if I knew it, I probably forgot it by now. So the great thing about the internet is I can relearn all of these things, and depending on the projects I'm working on, I'll research that period of time or that color or that image, and I'll try to find something that will match it. The great thing our architects do is look-alike plants. So don't be shy to think that, okay, that plant only grows well in England, that I can't grow something that has a similar look here in Florida. So one of them I think of as a podocarpus hedge versus a yew shrub. Two very different plants, but the two have a very similar look. So really the idea is to learn your plant landscape and what does well in your area and kind of stick to those varieties that do well. And the other thing I always caution gardeners is a lot has changed in the plant world in the last 10 years. So we have growers and breeders that are developing amazing varieties. So if you only knew the vinca, the little periwinkle that's through, it's probably, that one is great, but there's probably new ones out there that you've never thought to try that would probably perform better in your landscape. So just asking a little more questions and looking for those spectacular varieties, it will, if you've had failure with something, don't assume that that was the last time to try it, because there are no rules. So I grow things out of season and I manipulate plants to try to get them to do what I want them to do. So for example, I have a green ground cover. This is a dwarf mondo grass. Mm-hmm. It's been growing in western sun on my patio. This would typically be a shady, grow under oak tree kind of ground cover, but I acclimated this plant to my watering conditions, the way I water it, and the sun I had. And of course, it did get sunburned initially. I had enough water. I trimmed off the ugly, and then it flushed out new growth. And now these guys can grow in full sun. So that's an important thing when you go to the garden center and you get these things in full bloom. It's important to think about, where did it grow? Is this local? Try to get it as local as possible so it was growing up as a baby plant in your region with your humidity or your temperatures. A lot of times plants could come all the way from California to Florida. They might come off the truck beautifully, but then they're not really going to acclimate well if we don't prepare them for how we're. So that is one simple thing you can do. And a good plant to try that is like a Kimberly Queen fern. That's a pretty inexpensive plant that you can put in different spots of your yard and watch it and see if it burns up in different locations to try to gauge where your sun is. And then that off and move it in another spot, because if you can't visually see it, you can see how the plant reacts. And if that's like a $10 plant, you can move it around different spots of your yard, kind of get a sense of your lighting. That's a lot cheaper to kill a Kimberly Queen fern, one pot, than your entire by picking the wrong plant material. So that's a good hint to kind of get a sense of what your landscape is doing. So that over the seasons it could change.
So that so you just named two super beautiful green leafy plants. And we were talking about green as the new neutral. So do you like using greener, like just green in your landscaping?
So we also use it in floral, and I don't know if you can see this on the camera shot, but this is a little bit of greenery that was wired together for a garland. We have some eucalyptus, Italian ruscus. There's some different beautiful greenery in here. So as a florist, we're always using texture in our designs, and that's because that design is going to be seen up close. So it really has, we want a fullness to it. So a lot of times we use a lot of different greeneries to complement our beautiful filler flowers and spectacular flowers that we paid for. But the greenery is just as important. So that's your backdrop. And for a lot of landscapes, I think green is a great backdrop. And it's an easy one to always go to. If you like a specific leaf shape or texture, you can add that. And it's just another component of your landscape that you may have missed, where if you're walking it daily, you can appreciate the leaf shapes, the textures, how the greens play together, because there's so many shades of green. For example, chartreuse. So this is a carex. This is a southern living plant, and it's just a really beautiful wispy plant. This kind of evokes fall to me in a Central Florida kind of way because it blows in the wind, and it complements all my other fall colors that I've chosen. This is a simple plant. You could have it in a container, but it most definitely would work in your landscape. So me being me, I would have it in a container for a little bit, and then I would find a home for it in the landscape. So it's going to do double duty.
Since that's a grass, where would you plant that in your landscape? Is that going to be like a foundation? Is it going to be closer to the walkway? Where would you put that?
I would kind of use that because of its chartreuse color. Your eye is always going to look at that chartreuse. So wherever you want guests to walk or your visitors to walk, it's perfect for near a doorway or a pathway to help cue your people coming off the street. Hey, here's the door. Look at me. That's just a suggestion. Another easy one, if you didn't want to go with a grass, is a sweet potato vine. So this is a heart-shaped sweet potato vine. This can get cascading, billowing over the pot, or you could trim it to stay tight. It's all about how you want to use it in that pot. But this is a great fall color. So when I see sweet potato, it comes in bronzes and blacks and yellows. Those are all perfect colors for fall, right? They complement your pumpkins and your orange. So your orange doesn't have to be in your landscape. It could. I mean, these look awesome together. But you can play off of your pumpkins and your other fall decor.
Now, can you propagate that? Like if you were to cut off a section, can you propagate that? And what does that mean?
So it's it makes little roots. You can put it in a jar of water and start to see those roots. You can also train it to like take some of the vine and bury it, and then it will make roots in the soil, so you can like have it trail. There's a lot of different ways you can use it. It is a good, easy crop to add instant color without a lot of plant material in that pot. And you're going to see it. That chartreuse is just one of those colors. It's been proven. Your eyes are going to gravitate to it no matter what. So it's like, hey, look at me. So it's a good one to add. And it is a shade of green. So there's lots of great greens. And you can feel the texture of this Rebecca has like a fuzzy feel of that green. That's another texture you can incorporate. This green has on this Mona lavender has a black on a little purple tinge on the back of a leaf. So that one plays nice with different shades of green as well.
What about lamb's ear? Do you use lamb's ear down there?
Doesn't grow as well as it does for you in cooler regions, but it's also a fun one. Anything that has a nice, little kids love to touch the plants. Discourage that behavior when you have in your own garden, make sure that you have that sense of smell and touch incorporated in your containers, and you'll just get another level of enjoyment.
So that's interesting, because Emma Catherine, from a very young age, actually when we were in Little Rock, she would we had a very large rosemary bush by the back door, and she would walk and she would just run her hand like she was touching a puppy dog or something, and she'd rub her hand over and she'd go, "Rosemary."
And that is a great one, and it grows like a hedge here. So it's a nice, you can use it with roses, and it also has been suggested to grow that one near restaurants. So if you're trying to keep bugs or pest away, that's a nice one, kind of like citronella, and to keep those little critters away. And it also has been proven for memory, to improve memory. So if you smell rosemary every day, it's supposed to be good for your brain.
I had not heard that one. That's awesome. I need all the help I can get in that department. All right, so we've talked about color. We've talked about planting for a porch, how to care for those, popping color in to your landscape.